Therefore, it's very important to offset management with leadership. And what leadership is about is really establishing direction. Whether you're running a department or not, whether in fact you have a department or not. Establishing direction for me is about the vision and the strategies to get there. It's also about building alliances and coalitions. So the product management people and the engineers and the sales people actually focus on the prize instead of fighting with one another, which can occur in any organization. And finally, day in and day out, once you cut through the game rooms and the free candy, how excited are you about your jobs and about coming to work here? And about collaborating with the people in the next cubicle. That motivating and inspiring is one of the hardest things to do in organizational life. One, for yourself to be motivated and bring your A game every day, and then to make sure that you can get the people that you're collaborating with, or in fact supervising or managing, to make sure they bring their A game. It's hard to do. Next to raising teenagers, which I've done 4 times, motivating and inspiring people every day is very difficult. I don't know about the people in California or Washington, but if you take the subway, the New York City subway to work every day, which many of you do, and you look around at the misery on the faces of the people, you get a sense that people aren't terribly motivated and inspired about going to work. It's actually quite tragic. Not so funny. So, if management is about predictability and consistency and order, then leadership is about change and adaptability. An organization like Google, in the space you're in, has to be particularly adaptable given the technology and how quickly it changes in this space, adaptable to new technology, new competitors, new regulation, new competitive responses, new customers. So, effective organizations are both well-led and well-managed, which means your challenge is to be concerned about order and consistency and predictability more than you have been in the past, in my opinion, but at the same time, worried about vision and the strategies to get there and motivating and inspiring people to bring their A game to work. So how do you do that? I think the thing that's particularly important with leadership is building followership, particularly when this is such a high transaction collaborative organization. Influencing people, not relying on sanction, power, and authority, requires you to influence and persuade. So leadership, in my view, is really about building followership. It's really about pulling people. It's much less about the use of power and much more about the empowerment of others. It's really about taking people with you. And all of that is about managing relationships. It's about managing relationships down in the organization. It's about managing relationships up in the organization, sometimes with knucklehead bosses. And particularly important here at Google, it's about managing collaborative peer relationships. And all of that takes HTHC. All of that takes hand-to-hand combat. That is, it's all of those hundreds of transactions you have every day, up, down, and across. It gets people to do what you think they need to do. That's really what leadership is about. Leadership has nothing to do with your title, as you know. It has nothing to do with your sanction, power, and authority. It has to do with influencing and persuading people to do what you feel deeply is important to the success of this organization. That's why oratory and strategy and charisma won't help here. This is why leadership is just like an iceberg, right? 90% of it is hidden below the surface. So I want to talk to you about tactically, very real world setting. How do you lead people to excel? And just as context, I wrote a book several years ago called The Feiner Points of Leadership, where there are 50 laws or rules or principles that you could use to motivate and inspire people every day. And I'm not going to go through 50 laws because you'd be throwing tomatoes at me by the 20th, but I'd like to go over 10 laws that I think you can use immediately after this session, and I think it would enhance your effectiveness. Law number 1. This is not a typo. This is meant to add drama here. So don't get nervous for me. My slides they're okay. This law can best be explained by telling you a true story. 1968 California school district. And teachers are told that certain third graders have scored very high on a late bloomer test and to expect a learning spurt over the ensuing school year. Lo and behold, at the end of the school year, not only did these third graders improve their performance in the classroom, but their IQ scores went up. Quite dramatically, quite unexpectedly, their IQ scores went up. Surprising? There was no test. It was a ruse. It was a ploy. It was an experiment, now known as the Pygmalion experiment, between this very well-known social psychologist of the day and this California school district. What happened? Teachers were told to expect a learning spurt. And so as a result, gave these third graders who purportedly scored high on this late bloomer test, they gave these third graders more time, more attention, more focus, and more feedback. And these third graders, receiving this increased focus and attention and coaching, improved their performance in the classroom. This is what I call the law of expectations. In my parlance, what that means is when we expect people to succeed, they usually do. So, let me say it another way. People respond to the level of confidence you show in them. I would suspect that in your own lives, given how successful and how smart you are, this had an enormous impact because I would suspect this is the way you were parented. The fact is, however, this is an important attitude or mindset to have, particularly in a collaborative relationship, where you need ultimately to expect people to meet or exceed your expectations, because if you have people working for you in some cases who don't, they know it regardless of what you tell them. It's in the ether. It's in the oxygen. So if you have some concerns about people's ability to meet or exceed your expectations, you better make sure, because you are a leader, that you provide the teaching and enabling that's required so that, in fact, they do ultimately have your confidence.